Alright. So, here we're going to be detailing the Epiphany, which begins with, the understanding, and I'm going to detail the plot level about the Christ and how Joseph Smith helped me capture the Christ and force it to help me reveal this, cause a chain reaction that helped in understanding these revelations we're talking about here. But that's aside. I want to get to the main meat of the issue, which is, as we've seen in previous paperwork, we had identified the colors: green with the Atlanteans, blue with the elves, red with the dinosaurs. And we come to the understanding of that is the civilization which precedes us, these three civilizations. And that the human civilization was the purple. And now, in our previous cosmic figuring it out of the theatrical mathematics, 1 has always been associated with green, the Larry, 2 with Curly, the blue, 3 with the red, the Mo, and 4 with the Shemp, purple. Okay, that's the foundation of everything. So, what I was thinking as Mike Silva and I were going into paperwork madness recently, when I was having this, trying to understand what this, shocking confrontation with the light that Smith had triggered in the blue room, and how it allowed me to see things differently, and like the distortions of the light in terms of shapes, in terms of not thinking of it in numbers, the number 1, but rather a shape, a circle, and not the number 2, but the shape of an arch, okay, and not the number 3, but a triangle. And not the number 4, but a square. And not the number 5, but a pentagon. And now, this then, in terms of our looking at things, created a nice unfolding of the different shapes. And I have another card which shows how that happened, but I don't want to show that. Instead, what I want to do is, assuming all of these revelations to be true, we're going to sketch out the timeline of the planetary intelligences. Alright? Now this is going back to the beginning, 70 million years ago, to the dinosaurs, which is the first element in our whole big picture here, okay, the dinosaurs. And it's number 1, and it's the 3, the triangle red, because the 3 is representing the three-dimensional world and all of our previous associations of 3 with red. Now the dinosaurs produced the first conscious beings, the first brain cells, which then manifest a 4-dimensional consciousness in the form of the imps. And this 4-dimensional impish consciousness is unstable. You'll notice this is a 4-dimensional structure here, the square, but it's as a diamond. In other words, it's kind of wobbly, because this is the chaotic, unconscious, phonic or demiurgic period of the dinosaurs. And so it's very chaotic and brutal, and it only lasts long enough to produce what we can term the one of the red civilization here, okay? Which is what we now know to be the Satan, the Velociraptor, okay? 5-dimensional consciousness that is red. So this is the first 3 elements and shapes, and they are the first civilization and the first brain of the planet, which is then goes wrong and is destroyed, of course, as we know, in the, SmackDown. The dinosaurs are all killed. Goodbye.
That's why you see it in Christ.
Right, exactly. The dinosaurs are all killed, so this one's back off for a moment. Imps are left kind of in shock, and the Satan is kind of like asleep, okay? That's the result of the commentary SmackDown by who? The Orion Forces of Light, which grow, as a result, their own brain here. Their own brain cells, which are the elves, okay? 2-dimensional. In other words, just the doorway to the light. That's the 2-dimensional aspect that the elves represent. So they have the arch, which is number 4 now. Now they, because they're conscious beings, and they're producing an interaction with the planet, generate a 4-dimensional reflection on a little people level, which is the fairies. However, again, it's unstable. Why? In this case, for a different reason. Elven arrogance, which is the result of them not being native to the earth and being the result of the Orion intervention, and therefore feeling that they know better, that they're not going to listen to the elves, because they think of the elves, the fairies, elves think of the fairies initially in terms of how the imps were. In other words, they feel that whatever little people consciousness the planet's going to produce, they're judging it by the imps example. So they don't trust the fairies, the elves. And therefore they fail to understand the planet, and they have no connection to them. And that void is represented here by an orange triangle, okay? The fate. Because what we're looking at here is that what the elves are missing is a three-dimensional connection to the earth. They're too ethereal. And the reason for that is they are of the light. The red is the darkness, the dinosaur chaos. And just as there is no arch in red, which I'll get to later, there is no triangle in blue, which is the light. And that becomes a fate variable that holds the elves at bay for their entire existence a million years ago. Alright? So this is 70 million years ago, goes to hell, literally. And then the elves kind of stagnate into a placid heaven with this fate enigma keeping them in a quandary for a million years. Alright? And they become more and more placid and tranquil and irrelevant, okay? Until 26,000 years ago, when the Adam and Eve experiment begins in the Garden of Eden as a result of the intervention from the space god, whatever plot you're going to look at that starts the human civilization, alpha human civilization. Alright, the first age of humanity, which begins with Adam and Eve. Now, Adam and Eve are a one-dimensional seed. In other words, they're the clean slate. They're the perfected element of humanity in terms of its enfolded potential, which will be unfolded now as humans begin their journey. So, what happens is the elves, who are hanging around, held at bay, really don't want to be on the earth to begin with. They're kind of almost disenchanted to the point of apathy. They decide, aha, maybe these humans now can help us out with our dilemma. So they send a number of themselves, the Grey Elves, to the human one-dimensional. And when I say one-dimensional, I mean it's a one-dimensional point of potential that has yet to unfold in its two- or three-dimensional way. And so they're getting humans when they're right at the beginning, in the garden, literally. And the elves send the Grey Elves. The Grey Elves are literally those elves which will condescend to enter into the human level. And then that produces the Atlanteans, the first human civilization, number 8. Okay? It also produces the gnomes, which are the first human little people equivalent, and represent humans, alpha humans, of course, at the little people four-dimensional level. Alright? Now, the elves, watching this occur, this is now maybe the age of Scorpio by 18,000 years ago, so the first, several thousand years is about tutoring the humans to be Atlanteans, and studying them, and the elves seemingly benevolently helping you, well, we're the beings of light helping you out, but in fact, all they want to do is get the hell out of here. And so they're going to say and do anything they need to manipulate the Atlanteans to be effective brain cells for the planet, so that they can learn how to be effective brain cells for the planet, which they do. And so what that produces is then the Christ, okay? Which means that the elves, by studying the way humans interact with gnomes, solve the enigma that this fate represents, and are able to effectively communicate with the fairies, and that effective communication and combination results in the creation of the Christ, which is the first peak of the Atlantean civilization. And at that point, these elves, the primary, I'll call them high elves to be consistent with Tolkien, they are out of here, to Orion, to the other dimension, wherever they go. And they leave behind these petty humans. And what happens is then that the Grey Elves are kind of hanging around, but they're only few in number, mentors, right? And who comes in to replace the absence of the High Elves? It's the Dwarves. And why is this? And I'll give myself a pause and I want to comment. But the why is this is because the Christ breaks through the one level, okay, for the human, for the elves, and leaves behind a rending of the veil, let's say. Because this happens while the humans are around. Atlanteans witness the Christ manifestation of the elves. And so there's a direct byproduct on it in that humans now can see through the window, and who do they see? The dwarves. So the dwarves, even though they've existed for thousands of years before this point, don't enter the story here until the Christ has opened the door. Then the dwarves come in, and that results in a effect of now, the Atlantean civilization with the High Elves was based on Atlantis in the Atlantic Ocean. Okay? It had then, by this point, we're talking the height of Atlantis culture when the Christ is created. Okay? it has been now a global empire, expanded to a global empire, and its furthest outpost is in the South Pacific, which is dwarf territory. So those Atlantean colonists living in the South Pacific, who are now inundated with the dwarves thanks to the Christ breakthrough, are who will become the Lemurians. Okay? And then that creates the first full row that the planetary brain has ever had, 1 through 5 dimensions. The seed is nurtured according to order and chaos, tutelage, right? The chaos comes in as the antidote to the light. In other words, the Lemurians, by default, because they're interacting with the dwarves, and the dwarves are just literally not elves, that's all that matters, they're not the elves. They're 5-dimensional creatures. They're actually at a higher dimensional frequency than the so-called high elves in terms of human perception, because we can't even perceive the whole light of the high elves, only the doorway to that light, which is why it's 2-dimensional. But humanoid creatures, the dwarves, just like us in terms of origin from a hominid, but now expanded to the 5-dimensional level, we're able to interact with them because the Christ has been produced by the elves right in front of us, and then that creates an alternative to just the light. There's now this other, the dwarves, and so the Lemurians pursue that other. And this is actually now going to lead to the resurrection or the rebirth of the Satan. Why? Because the Grey Elves, now the High Elves are gone. Alright, they're out of here. The Grey Elves are the ones that are going to be tuteling the humans. And they realize, especially after the High Elves bail, they realize, especially now considering the satanic history of the planet with the dinosaurs, that humans are not going to be just imitating the elves. That these Lemurians who begin to develop show the Grey Elves that there's another element needed. That the humans have to have a real understanding of the triangle. Okay? And so the Grey Elves, and they're sometimes called the Dark Elves at this point because they seem to be betraying the light and siding with the satanic agenda, convince the dwarves to show the Lemurians where the Satan is, and they dig it up. And Satan wakes up approximately, 14,000 years ago, let's say, and instigates the war between Atlantis and Lemuria that's going to wipe all of it off the table. Everybody goes to hell. It's all gone. Alright? The dwarves and the few Atlantean survivors are like floating around. Satan and the Christ are now left to determine what's going to happen next with the fairies, imps, and gnomes on the scene. This is the Great Flood. Okay? So you got to look at Enoch and the characters like that as working with the dwarves in the number 11. The Christ is the awakened light consciousness level of the planet, opposing now the Satan in the contest over the souls of who now are going to become the humans. Number 13. Okay? Now, before we get to that, at this point in the narrative, we sketched out how it all is unfolding. What occurred then, once I had said, now I'm going to take a breath, segue briefly to Mike Silva, and can you illuminate why, when I showed you all this, you then became concerned with, what about Adam and Eve to humans, from 6 to 13? Can you give just a quick summary of what your thought was on that as I take a drink? What that was about.
Planetary verse, or in conjunction with humanoid. We are concerned with 2 frames of time and space. One of them is the development of awareness in intelligent creatures on the planet. We have 3 civilizations that developed awareness. Along with that, we have the origin of the humanoid, of the humans, not the humanoids, as we know ourselves to be today. The appearance of all that is in history of the planet is not on the same timeline as for humans as it is for the planet itself.
Right.
So I needed you, for me,
to give you an alternate showing of these
not an alternate showing, just what we consider to be the first appearance of the number 13 humans, purple square, in human, that's in humanoid appearance.
Right.
In human appearance, most of the billions equate that number 13 humans square, purple, with the number 6, Adam and Eve.
Right, the start of the... Right.
So I needed to know...
Alpha and Omega starting points for humanity right here, folks.
That since most
Alpha,
humans would consider their starting point the number 6, from the appearance of humanoids on the planet.
What's the order?
What
how
is the
they
order
came
from the true Adam and Eve?
How they came in. Right, so...
And for me, the number, correct me if I'm wrong, but the number 13 human, as you just slapped it down, represents the remnants of that original pure humanoid race
but
that was
influenced by all that occurred
that was
in the first
left over
age.
after the smashing of everything.
Yes,
so
the breaking of the
technically, they
world.
are the Adam and Eve of the human era for the timeline of the Earth.
But this is like the
But
Noah's
not for
Ark type scenario, right? And from forward, then that becomes leading up to now our present. So what
I did was I backed you up to make the number 6 equal the human appearance as we know ourselves to be.
Right.
And wanted you to walk me through to...
And my response now then to that, for that walkthrough, okay? And this is how it comes down. So just follow me along here on the page, okay? Adam and Eve, that's the first humans.
So we ended at the number 13.
Ended at the number 13. Right, we're going from the journey from 6 to 13. Adam and Eve, those first humans.
I'd rather go from 13 to 6. But
well, just to give it a narrative equal to linear ways, okay? The first thing that happens then, once Adam and Eve are on the seat, is from above, oh, it's the Grey Elves, right? And then that results in the Atlanteans, okay? Wonderful, right? But what happens then is that we generate the gnomes, okay?
Can you give the equivalence of people in history when you started? So Adam and Eve meaning...
Adam and Eve meaning the first humans grown in the garden by the space gods, which are actually us from the future, or which are whatever other omnipotent creative forces you want to assign. Variable for whatever you want. Whoever it was that created. Okay. Whatever they created it, and then they let the experiment cook. And the Grey Elves, who are like the angels who are maintaining the scenario, are the ones who then grow that first experimental cell of humanity into the Atlanteans. So that process occurs, and it takes roughly 6,000 years, okay, to go from Adam and Eve to what we consider the Atlantean civilization, right? And so the Grey Elves, this is like from 26,000 years ago to about 20,000 years ago, all right, into the age of Scorpio. Right, the beginning of that number 3 on the big clock. This is number 12. You're going around to number 3 at this point, because every hour is 2,160 years. So it's kind of like a mirror to the calendar of light, Masonically. This whole journey from Adam and Eve to the Atlanteans, which is a whole other story. But in any event, so that takes us up to the creation of the first alpha human civilization, which is the Atlanteans. And once we become a civilization, that's when we develop a 4-dimensional reflection, right? The dinosaurs actually achieved a civilization with velociraptors as a ruling class, and that's when they produced the imps, right? So the Atlanteans produced this first human civilization, and that generates gnomes, all right? And immediately then, okay, fairies come in from above, imps come up from below, all right? And begin the tug of war of over humanity, right? And this then is ring-led, in a way, by the Christ and the Satan. I mean, remember, this is the, like, you know, kind of puppeteered by the Christ and the Satan, with the dwarves being kind of the referees, all right, of this battle between order and chaos for the human soul, which the gnomes are in the middle of as well, okay? And this creates the dichotomy of the modern, this dynamic war between red and blue, you see, moderated passively by the green, creates ultimately the purple, which the humans are. But in order to do that, it needs to balance itself totally with the satanic influence, which means that the Lemurians come in at this point, but because they create a tipping point, you see, into the pit of hell, they drag everything literally down with them. Okay? You see. And, you know, the imps and, you know, fairies and gnomes, they can come right back out of the abyss because they're generated like insects are from, you know, bacteria. So, from you know, certain conditions in nature, the imps, gnomes, and fairies will always be regenerated once they've imprinted in the planetary brain. So even though they're almost all destroyed, they're not even entirely tangible. They're four-dimensional. But what the point is there is that the Satan and the Christ, you know, when they bounce back now, what's going to happen is, with the dwarves, it's all going to be about, it's all going to add up, essentially. All this that we just saw here is going to add up to the fact that we have number 14, the cosmic seed, okay? Which is influenced by the Adam and Eve original Atlantean impulse, as well as the Grey Elves, okay, and their whole civilization, right? And the red as well now. Why? Let me get these things back up in play quickly. Got the gnomes, fairies, and the imps right above this, okay? And what happens is that the dwarves hanging around, giving us Atlantean, you know, lore and pushing our buttons as we begin the human journey. So now at the point in the timeline, we're in the Conan period, okay? This is from, let's say, 10,500 BC to roughly the start of the civilizations as it's admitted by history, roughly 7 to 6,000 BC. So it's that period from number 6 on the clock, where everything went to hell, up to number 9 on the clock, counting down to the 12, which is where we are. So you have the resetting of the scenario now. And what happens is, as soon as the humans have this cosmic seed, then we begin to develop our civilizations, right? As a result of the dwarves and Atlanteans in the kind of, you know, men from the sea, Noah's Ark, puppeteering us, programming us, plot levels. That creates the cosmic seeding, and just as the Christ is pushing people's buttons by sending angelic fairy messengers, etc., with the Grey Elves, so does the Satan now get into the act. Okay? And we get the birth of Hoovers. Alright? So Hoovers are the red seed within the purple seed. What is this? Insemination, where the green seed inseminating the purple square, right, is going to actually produce, you know, what we, you know. But, so what, the blue seed inseminating it produces something else, the red seed inseminating produces something else. So what do they produce, you ask, okay? Now, at this point, we can, just for a reminder, since everything's being told to us again in lore and history by the dwarves and stuff, we are re-accessing it because science is digging up the dinosaurs. We're re-accessing the original world here, but in a more abstracted way. And the fate enigma remains, and the evil enigma comes into play. Once Satan begins to push our button through the Hooverization, we now have the activation of the orange triangle and the yellow arch, filling in the otherwise holes that the polarity of red, blue, light, dark create. So they become variables in the overall, you know, list of formulae that we will have at the end of this process. But summing up now, the top level of the purple frequency. So this, you'll see, is the dark 70 million years ago and on up till, you know, our present day versions of red. With evil in here, in other words, the absence of the arch or positivity within red is evil. Just like at the blue level, the absence of the negativity or the triangle within blue is fate. Okay, so those two variables then of fate, evil, are, as we've been saying before, the yellow and orange keys, etc., etc. So that's a whole other view of that same thing.
I would like to make a quick input.
Please, before I go up on the top level, please.
Because we're at where we're at.
And you can film now this, just as a prep for what we're saying. Go ahead.
The yellow arch represents doors and other significances. And the reason why that door is not colored red with a applicable number and name is because it must exist, but we never want it to open, because it only leads to yellow things.
Right.
So that's why it is the no-name evil arch, and it's a byproduct that has to exist. And if it must exist and not be named, then it must be unnatural, so it must be yellow.
Right.
Because it is true. It's just dangerous in our opinion. With the orange triangle, we refuse to, or would not like to make that blue with a number and a name, because that represents third-dimensional reality. And this row, for what it stands for, should have gotten it right the first time. And since they didn't, there's no reason how their civilization as it existed on the planet, not with the planet, not in the planet, but on the planet, didn't happen. They got to their end result, but they didn't get to the planetary end result.
Right.
Therefore, at least we know it is right. That doesn't make... We know it is true. That doesn't make it right.
Right.
So we represent reality with a fade.
Yes.
Orange. So that's the flip side of explanation for that. Please continue with...
Yes. Now, what I left off at the creation of the Hoovers, which is the beginning of civilization. Say, 6,000 years ago, in the cradle of civilization, strong men, Hooverized control that begins to create the caste system of control, which is a dinosaur. Remember, the dinosaurs are also representing what we call institutional. We have it here on this chart. Dinosaurs are government political institutions, right? So from the human point of view now, the best way to understand dinosaurs is in terms of governmental institutions that humans have to deal with that are like mindless monsters that need to be barely wrangled into paperwork entanglement. And then what is that? It creates government, which is now the Illuminati. So that's why number 16, you see, is the purple triangle, or the Illuminati, which is, look, actually 15 plus 1 is 16.
Right, we will let the red let the red inseminate the purple seed and to produce the Illuminati.
Right, the red inseminating the... Yeah,
so
see, that's it.
Got it wrong.
Right, and that's the first way to go wrong, is when you inseminate with the red seed into the square and you get the... Now, if you inseminate with the blue seed, you get the lovely star people, which is all of the I'm in contact with the light characters from, mainly focusing from about 3,000 years ago, starting with Moses and these other type of guys who, Akhenaten or whoever claimed to be focusing on the light, the Father, the elven connection, bringing it in to human civilization as a prophetic, a blue injection of light in a plot level that's going to create an antithesis to the establishment and will be the religion comparing to the politics, or create a cosmic mundane duality of 1617. Go ahead. So that's the red, blue,
insemination of the Grey Elves, which is 7, with a cosmic seed, which is 14, is 21, and 21 is an extremely significant number in the truth, but not in the timeline. As far as star people have it right, but just for themselves. That's why they are also...
Like the elves had it right, but irrelevant, didn't serve the planet's needs, so they had the enigma of fate in their way.
Once they try to let what they know infect the other humans, it becomes improper because it was only truth for them.
Right.
So the 21 works for them as an individual, but not for the masses. Right. So that is actually a good personal way to do it, but also the wrong way for civilization.
And then, so finally now, what happens, you may ask, if the green seed is correctly inseminating into this? The answer is the hyperhuman, which is tutored through the dwarves in our understanding of the Atlantean legacy correctly, the correct balancing of what the Atlanteans got wrong, and also what has gone wrong planet-wise to this point. You'll notice that humans finally have a square that's level, right? That's balanced because it's able to integrate all three of the previously imbalanced forces. So that summarizes then what this whole era up to this point, Omega point, is about. The hyperhumans now. And just, looking at it in terms of the most relevant factors, of course, are not the different factions within humanity, which is what people think the relevant factors are. The relevant factors are hyperhumans' interactions with dwarves, Christ, and Satan, and the understanding of what they are, and primarily that the Christ is no better for humans than Satan is, ultimately. So, thank you for your patience, and any final comment on my soul?
Yes, my final comment is the reason why we firmly believe that the timeline for humanity, not for in conjunction, in harmony with the planet, for the universal acceptance on a planetary consciousness level, is because we're going from the Adam and the Eve to the human. You saw us do 7 and 14 as a true 21, which is important but irrelevant for the star people. But on an individual, why I'm going with that is the insemination of the Adam and Eve into the cosmic seed is not what we're trying to go. We're trying to mirror the humans with the Adam and Eve to create the hyperhuman.
Yes.
And mirror the truth of the history. And we realize that this is an equation. Pluses and minuses are important, and why I want to go
right, so
with
these
that
all
is,
detach and become part of formulaic dances.
but the only one that is important is we are trying to get from here to here. 6 plus 13 is not 18. But 6 plus 13 minus 1 is 18. So, using the understanding of the true Adam and Eve, screw the cosmic seed, this is the true human seed if in our natural growth for who we are right now, from my birth
the pure pattern,
to where I
the
am
man,
right
the
now.
woman, right.
But for Mike Silva, for Steve Prelwitz, that's all I'll speak for now.
Yeah.
As our fourth dimensional human selves, knowing that this reality had to exist, which includes the imps and the Satan and the Hoovers, allows for the hyperhuman consciousness, because 6 plus 13 minus 1 is 18.
Nice.
And this is how you can be...
That's just the preliminary view of how these type of combinations will be dealt with. Okay.
Well, right. But that's just the quickest way to walk from Adam and Eve to the human consciousness that needs to be developed, and the only way that you can accept the truth of this level of consciousness is by understanding the reality of the dinosaur civilization.
Dun, 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 which is the missing element that is haunting everyone. So, all hail Abraxas.